advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. I want to give a big shout out to Micro Toolmaker, where we go one, we go all. Thank you so much, sir, for your ongoing support of the channel. And thank you very much to you as well for the 10 subscriptions you just gifted to all the lovely viewers over there on Rumble. Thank you so much to Skater23, who says, thanks for all you do for all of us. I really do appreciate it. And even thank you to those who are hating me over on YouTube. I do appreciate you being here, because every single interaction is good for the channel. So, what am I talking about today? The new Epstein emails. Well, you know, the deep state's going to deep state, and what happened yesterday? We had a revelation of the Clinton corruption files. Hillary Clinton is kind of like the queen of the deep state, if you will. And of course, they have to come out with something that's going to attempt to distract from that. So the House Dems are the ones releasing these emails. Jock33, 333, who would hate me? Oh, the people who hate Donald Trump. The people who don't believe that he is truly saving America, putting America first, bringing the entire world into the golden age, but they'll learn. They'll eventually learn. All right, so we do have a jam-packed show for you today. I'm extremely excited about everything we're going to talk about. Do me a favor, hit that like button, hit the thumbs up, hit the red pill, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to get into it right about now. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Really do appreciate it. And thank you no matter what platform you are on. As I said, we do have a jam-packed show to discuss today. But first of all, I do need to mention the sponsor of today's program. That's going to be my friends over here at Kimchi One. You guys, did you know that U.S. life expectancy peaked at 78 years in 2014? And global life expectancy is now declining for the very first time in 30 years because people are aging and their health is deteriorating faster than ever before. This is due to more toxins in the air, chemicals in our soil and our food, and other external factors that are new to us. What most people don't know is that you can actually fight aging and disease on a cellular level. You see, scientists discovered that kimchi actually slows the aging process of human cells and protects your DNA from damage, which can lead to chronic disease and cancer. Now, the power of nature can outweigh the power of pharmaceuticals without the nasty side effects. And now you can get all of the benefits of kimchi in a simple capsule with Kimchi One. Each capsule delivers over 900 probiotic strains, plus antioxidants and enzymes, and as we age, we become more susceptible to microbial threats. But Kimchi One is a natural antimicrobial, helping your body fight off harmful bacteria, fungi, viruses, and even parasites. All of that boosts immunity and energy. And best of all, Kimchi One is 100% made in the USA. It's all natural, it's non-GMO. You can support your gut, you can support your cells, protect them, and feel younger every single day with Kimchi One from Brightcore. Now, you also have the opportunity to get a special deal. Today, you can get 25% off your order by using code REDPILL at mybrightcore.com/RedPill. Or for the best deal, you can also call Brightcore at 888-383-5996. You're even going to get up to 50% off. You'll get free shipping, and you're going to get a free bottle of vitamin D3 with your order. Once again, that number is 888-383-5996. Detox your body, rebuild your gut, and take your health into your own hands starting today. Thank you very much to the good folks over there at Brightcore. All right, now, I would like to begin today. No worries, Jeremy. Thank you very much for being here. Even if you're only going to lurk, it's not a problem. If you are just lurking, do me a favor. Just say hi in the chat. Say, hey, we are here. We are listening. And you can hit that like button. All right. Now, Alabama Christian, I saw you say that you were sent into a tizzy by the current timeline. Personally, I feel great about this current timeline. I see all of these things taking place, and I feel that we are heading in one direction and one direction only. Now, as I said, the deep state's going to deep state. People are going to complain. People are not going to get it. People are going to be simple if they were born simple and they don't take the time to learn about what's actually happening. If they can't break out of their own stinking programming. The brainwashing is very good with those that we are fighting against. The deep state has oftentimes had an entire lifetime to drill into the minds of people that they cannot rise above their station, that things will never change, that the people who are trying to help you are actually trying to harm you. And, of course, Donald Trump is a perfect example of that. Lori, thank you very much. I appreciate you. First of all, I'd like to take you to this hilarious clip from the president of Syria coming to visit President Trump this past couple of days. Now, in this clip, President Trump sprays some of his Trump cologne onto the leader of Syria and then also onto, I believe, what is
men's.
What is his ambassador, or perhaps just maybe the interpreter? But first of all, I am a big fan of President Trump. You guys all know that. I also have like 4 different types of Trump cologne. I have Trump Victory 45 right here. I believe they came out with the secondary version called Victory 47. I have Trump Empire right here, which really blasts the people who hate him. They don't like that. They also don't like Trump's fight, fight, fight fragrance, but I've got that as well. And finally, my favorite Trump cologne is Success by Trump. I've been wearing this since 2019 when Lisa and I went to stay at the Trump Tower in Las Vegas. I'm usually very picky about my colognes, and I don't necessarily like all of these as much as I like the other ones, but Trump's Success is great, and they don't make it anymore. It's kind of a bummer. All right, so anyways, here is President Trump spraying the president of Syria with his cologne.
This is men's fragrance. Hold it. Yeah. This is what. No.
He's like, here, you got to try it.
It's the best fragrance. Come here, please.
I have more here, sir.
Okay? So what we'll do is just take that, Joe, put it in, and then the
you.
other one is for your wife. How many wives? You guys had never know, right?
He said, how many wives? One? He said, yeah, one. He's like, I never know with you guys.
I never know.
أنا أرسلت له هدايا فيها شيء أثري قديم. أول أبجدية صارت في التاريخ، أول ختم أيضا صار في التاريخ، أول نوتة موسيقية أيضا.
All of them were in Syria.
أول تعريف جغرافية أيضا صارت في العالم.
That was made in the world.
Very good.
هي نسخة عن أشياء أثرية موجودة من أصولها في أرسل الهدية للسيدة الأولى. كم زوجة؟
Very good. Right now, one.
Right now, one. He's only got one wife right now. All right, so what President Trump does with each and every one of these leaders, he gives people an opportunity to come into the fold, to become part of the brand new Trump world order. There were some people who were very upset that President Trump met with the new leader of Syria because he used to be an ISIS fighter, and obviously the United States was fighting against ISIS. But what people often forget is that Barack Hussein Obama and the Central Intelligence Agency actually created ISIS. It was all a ruse, a nom de guerre, a magic trick, if you will. And for so many years, we were battling with Assad's forces and ISIS all across Syria. I mean, it was a total shit show. I had friends who went to serve in Syria. And I remember when when they got called up and they were like, well, that's it, Zach. I'm probably going to end up in Syria. And what did they go for? Absolutely nothing. So what President Trump does is he ends these conflicts all around the world. He strengthens bonds between nations. He ends the need for a handling of the military-industrial complex. Up until this point, the global order has been based upon how many people you can kill and how many missiles and how many bullets you can buy. And that was what kept these economies going. No more. Now economies are going to be shaped by trade deals. Economies are going to be shaped by the gross domestic product of a nation. Relationships are going to be shaped by how countries can help each other. Well, I don't see how you can't see that and understand that President Trump is bringing peace and prosperity to the entire world. He truly is an amazing man. He deserved the Nobel Peace Prize, and you may not agree with me, but that's okay. This is America, baby, and that's what is so wonderful about it. Now, there will always be somebody who thinks they can do a better job than President Trump. One of those people, I didn't even mention this the other day because I don't really care for her, but Nancy Pelosi, now that she is retiring from politics, her daughter is now running to become an elected official. I think she's running for Congress, or maybe she's running for like California State Senate, something like that. Now, JFK's grandson, Jack Schlossberg, he has announced that he is also going to be running, except he will be running for Congress, the U.S. House of Representatives. He's going to be running for Jerry Nadler's former seat in New York's 12th district. Now, Schlossberg absolutely hates Donald Trump. He also hates his uncle, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The qualifications for Jack Schlossberg are iffy at best. All right, this man may be a Kennedy by blood, but the man has only had one job his entire life. I think he worked for like Vogue or like Vanity Fair or something like that. And I don't even think that he did anything really of note. But Jack Schlossberg is going to be running to represent the Upper West Side, the Upper East Side in Midtown Manhattan. He is kind of, oh, I'm featured on Rumble. That's awesome. Well, good stuff. If you're coming here because I'm featured on Rumble, thank you very much. Do give us a thumbs up. Now, Jack Schlossberg has also gotten into it with J.D. Vance. He's gotten into it with pretty much everybody in the Trump world. Here he is taking a selfie with Joe Biden. And Jack Schlossberg is likely going to end up being the man who replaces Jerry Nadler. So I don't know what that's going to look like for the people of New York, if that's really going to change anything. But Jack Schlossberg really is going to buy his way into this seat because he is essentially American political royalty. So keep your eyes on Jack Schlossberg. He's going to be around for a while. History, reopen, last close tab. All right. Now, we also have an update to a story that we first covered a really long time ago. You may remember when I first told you about a scandal that was developing in Arizona with a company called Sunshine Residential Homes. This was a group foster home situation for children in need. It was directly connected to Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs. I thought this was very interesting. This dropped today after we got word yesterday that the AG of Arizona, Chris Mays, was likely taking payoffs through a DNC subsidiary so that the architects of the Color Revolution strategy and Hillary Clinton's former CFO could then prosecute their Republican enemies. Now, Katie Hobbs is now under investigation, like serious under investigation for racketeering. So the operator for these group homes for foster children gave Katie Hobbs a $400,000 payoff. This was a quid pro quo deal. In return for that $400,000 payment, Katie Hobbs let these companies, let the company operating these foster homes increase their rates by 65%. Now, this is notable because the funding for those group homes comes directly from the taxpayers for Arizona. So that is essentially a 65% increase on the money that is coming out of the pockets of the taxpayers of the state of Arizona. Sunshine Residential Homes is based out of Phoenix. They donate this $400,000 donation, quid pro quo payment to Katie Hobbs. That goes to her inauguration fund and the Arizona Democratic Party. And then in return, through the Department of Child Safety, which is an organization that is part of the state of Arizona, they grant this special treatment to Sunshine Residential Homes. That includes the more than 60% rate increase. It went from $195 to $234 per child per day. Initially, this request by Sunshine Residential Homes was actually denied. And it was only after the payment was made that suddenly Katie Hobbs and the government was like, you know what? It's okay. We're going to let them bilk the taxpayers. And then even on top of that, they expanded the contracts for Sunshine Residential Homes, which went from 280 children per facility to up to 322 children per facility. So not only was Sunshine Residential Homes making a lot more money per child, they were also cramming these facilities with more children who were in need. So this ends up netting Sunshine Residential Homes millions of dollars more in state funds annually. And they would also get $4 million if the beds were full. So if every home had the full capacity of 322 children, they're immediately getting the $4 million. And Sunshine was also a monopoly. They were the only provider who was receiving such a hike as this under Katie Hobbs' administration. Now, there may have been other facilities that were providing similar services, but they were not granted the same leeway, so to speak. So this is quite literally and obviously a pay-to-play scheme. It violates a number of laws, including bribery and fraud. There is a clear conflict of interest. Procurement codes were essentially ignored in this scheme. And racketeering, RICO, has been invoked in legislative letters due to the pattern of donations and then the contracts that were awarded only after those donations were made. So here is the timeline. Sunshine donates $200,000 to the Arizona Democratic Party. This is in the midst of Katie Hobbs' gubernatorial campaign. Sunshine is denied their initial rate hike, and then they donate another $100,000 to Katie Hobbs' inauguration fund. That was in February of 2023. The rate hike gets approved, and then immediately thereafter, an additional $100,000 donation is made again to the inauguration fund. So the Arizona Republic is publishing a story on this, and they said this Arizona group home donated $400,000 to Governor Katie Hobbs and the Democrats, and they got more state money. Now, Katie Hobbs is also literally running from local reporters who are attempting to press her on whether or not this pay-to-play scheme was something she was aware of. Considering the amount of the money and the direct correlation this organization has to Arizona taxpayer money, you would have to believe that Katie Hobbs was aware of what was going on. At a minimum, take a listen.
We're not taking questions today. I'm very sorry.
Governor, it's been a week since you vetoed a bill. What do you want? Why won't you take any questions? It's been 4 weeks, Governor, since you've had a gaggle. Why are you avoiding the public? Why are you avoiding the press, Governor? In 4 weeks, Governor. Oh, that's the sound of a suburban door. Thank you.
That's Katie Hobbs' only statement on the matter, the sound of a closing suburban door. Well, of course, she does not want to talk to the press about this because she's looking at some big, big jail time. All right. Now, you probably remember former Texas House Speaker Dade Phelan. Dade Phelan is the man who showed up drunk to work, was ridiculed in public when we played the clip over and over again. And then, because he was called out by Texas AG Ken Paxton, he led a totally corrupt attempt to impeach him. And, of course, he failed. Well, now Dade Phelan is officially retiring from state politics in Texas. And President Trump says, good riddance to bad rubbish. All right, so this news came out yesterday that he's not going to be seeking re-election in the Texas House of Representatives. Not only that, he's just going to retire from politics. President Trump said, fortunately for the great state of Texas, their former speaker, who is no longer speaker, Dade Phelan, is quitting politics. He was the one responsible for killing every bill having to do with voter integrity and school choice. Good luck in your next life, Dade. All right, so Dade Phelan is out, and Ken Paxton, of course, was acquitted of all the charges. The whole thing was fake. It was a sham. And later, the Texas GOP actually censured Dade Phelan for this attempt to clearly get some revenge against AG Paxton. Now, it took a couple of years, but now Dade Phelan is out for good. And of course, Ken Paxton is continuing to rise in political circles. He is likely to be prepped to beat John Cornyn in the upcoming election. And as he continues with not only his campaign, but of course, maintaining his position as the AG of Texas, Texas AG Ken Paxton has also just announced that he is suing Harris County Commissioner's Court over their unconstitutional grants that they've been handing out. Apparently, they have given over $1.3 million to a series of left-wing organizations, and you'll never guess that money has been used to defend illegal aliens who have been facing their lawful deportation in court. You know, they always like to say, but what about due process? What about due process? I'll tell you what, the due process is when the courts say that these people are already not allowed to be here and they need to get their asses home. We must stop the left-wing radicals who are robbing Texans to prevent illegals from being deported by the Trump administration, Ken Paxton said in his press release announcing this lawsuit. Beyond just being blatantly unconstitutional, this is evil and wicked. Millions upon millions of illegal aliens invaded America during the last administration, and they must be sent back to where they came from. In a recent 4-1 vote, the Harris County Commissioner's Court allocated $1,344,751 in taxpayer funds for distribution to several non-governmental organizations that were dedicated exclusively to fighting the deportation of illegal aliens. These expenditures are unconstitutional grants of public funds to private entities to subsidize the legal defense of illegal aliens who ought to be deported. Now, the Texas Constitution already talks about this. It expressly prohibits governmental entities like Harris County from misusing public funds by giving gifts or conferring private benefits to individuals and groups that do not serve a legitimate public end. Keeping the illegal aliens in the United States of America certainly is the exact opposite of the legitimate public end. Now, some of the groups that were paid by the Harris County organization include the Galveston-Houston Immigrant Representation Project, Justice for All Immigrants, Kids in Need of Defense, or KIND, the Refugee and Immigrant Center for Education and Legal Services, and Baker Ripley. This includes $100,000 to the Houston Immigrant Representation Project to operate an immigrant resource hotline, the lawsuit says. Now, this lawsuit was, of course, announced by AG Paxton on X. He has been on fire there. He's a great follow. I suggest you do that, where he just said, I am suing Harris County for unlawfully directing over $1.3 million in taxpayer funds to defend illegal aliens. We must stop these people. Now, the lawsuit argues that the expenditures not only run afoul of the Texas state constitution gift clause because these expenditures are gratuitous, they serve predominantly private interests, and they are not subject to adequate governmental oversight. But in addition to that, the individuals that are subject to removal in these instances have no constitutional or statutory right to government-approved counsel. Instead, they may obtain counsel at no expense to the government. You can look at 8 U.S.C. 1362 for reference on that. However, despite that, the Harris County attorney claims that the move was perfectly legal, announcing plans to fight the lawsuit, which, of course, was filed on Monday. This lawsuit is a cheap political stunt, he says, at a time when the president has unleashed ICE agents to perform their lawful duties, to terrorize immigrant neighborhoods, deport U.S. citizens. No U.S. citizens have been deported, and trample the law, actually uphold the law. It's shameful that Republican state officials are joining in instead of standing up for Texans. If you're an illegal alien and you're not a citizen of the United States of America, my friend, you are not a Texan and you are not an American. All right, so I'm very happy that Texas AG Ken Paxton is doing this. We need more of this. A little bit of additional news coming out of Texas. The lieutenant governor is also getting in on the action. He's also ordered the Texas Rangers to head into Texas Southern University. Apparently, an audit has just revealed an additional misappropriation of funds. Hundreds of millions of dollars, also from the taxpayers, have been used for unauthorized invoices. So the Texas Rangers investigation into Texas Southern University has come about following damning revelations from a state audit uncovering thousands of unauthorized invoices totaling hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer funds that have now been misappropriated. Now, Lieutenant Governor Patrick announced this move on Monday, also on X. He cited very disturbing information suggesting the misuse of state funds. Today, I called for a Texas Rangers investigation of Texas Southern University after we learned of what's been happening. The state auditor identified thousands of unauthorized invoices totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. Those accountable must be held responsible. I don't want one more taxpayer dollar spent until this is resolved. Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty. The Texas State Auditor's Office has been conducting a audit on this organization for several months, looking into TSU's financial processes, procurement operations, and inventory records. And according to State Auditor Lisa R. Collier's letter sent out on Monday, the audit has identified thousands of invoices totaling more than $400 million that were either tied to expired contracts or received before their official requisition dates. You've got 743 invoices totaling approximately $282.2 million for vendors whose contracts were listed in the contract database as expired. You've got another 8,144 invoices totaling approximately $158 million with invoice dates prior to their requisition dates. Now, the auditor also determined that TSU failed to maintain proper asset inventories and also failed to submit timely financial reports to the Texas Comptroller's Office. And sometimes they didn't even do it until up to 10 months after the deadline. Now, the findings clearly show there is a systemic failure in financial oversight at the university. Their contract management is completely out of control. They have no reporting compliance, and it raises a lot of concerns about possible fraud, waste, and abuse, again, of taxpayer money. So the auditor's findings have been verified, and the situation shows a total breakdown of accountability. Over the last several months, this audit has shown that TSU's financial processes, procurement operations, and inventory records are simply not up to the standards of the Texas state government. So they are likely going to find themselves in a lot of trouble. And of course, I think the citizens of the state of Texas have every right in the world to ask, where is that money? Who received those payments, dang old Aggie? Exactly. If these contracts were expired, then were they simply going to the people who were previously collecting checks? Were the people collecting checks even giving anything in return? Or were the state citizens, or were the citizens of the state of Texas simply watching that money flow into an empty hole and then down the drain? I'm sure the auditors will tell us in the very near future. Now, we also have information coming from the Supreme Court of the United States of America. They are now set to decide whether or not President Trump's administration can control riots against ICE facilities using the National Guard. So they will likely decide in about a week on this extremely important constitutional question. This is all part of the Trump administration's agenda, again, on illegal immigration. So you've got Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. They won a district court injunction against the president's use of the National Guard and other military that he wanted to use to quell riots and violent disorder in the city of Chicago. Of course, Portland, Oregon, Los Angeles, California, they're also facing parallel circumstances. And while they're not technically part of this case, Oregon and California have entered briefs on behalf of the plaintiffs. And certainly, whatever the Supreme Court decides will apply to all of them. Now, some observers are calling this a growing civil war. What you have are sanctuary states and sanctuary cities that have been directly interfering with federal enforcement of immigration laws. There is a supremacy clause in the Constitution for anyone who is fuzzy on the math here. Representative Brandon Knotts has, of course, written an article about Democrats attacking the federal law enforcement. This is what you might call the new Confederacy. And while the federal government cannot force the states to implement federal policies, neither can states interfere with federal functions. That has been widely documented in case and precedent that has been decided in many different courts and many different cases throughout the years. However, officials within the Democrat Party and activists among the radical left have spread misinformation far and wide. As the American Rights Alliance brief warns, false impressions are inflaming real violence. Now, the American Rights Alliance has urged the Supreme Court to not only rule clearly, but also explain their ruling to calm the misunderstandings. I have said on many different occasions, civics is simply not something that many people understand nowadays. There is a number of fundamental misunderstandings about the form and function of government, as well as the separation of powers and, of course, the use of the supremacy clause. A lot of people would suggest that President Trump and his efforts in places like Chicago, this is somehow illegal. The ICE Gestapo is coming in and arresting families, and they're taking people out of their homes, and they're just deporting them without even checking to see what their citizenship status is. But none of that is true. If U.S. citizens or governments interfere with police operations, they can be arrested under 18 U.S.C. and a number of other statutes. If you are a citizen who disrupts police activities, you are not immune to that legal standing. U.S. courts have ruled on this, and it's been for quite a long time, for 2 centuries. A warrant is not required when law enforcement witnesses a crime in front of them, and especially when an offender might disappear. As an example, if ICE officials show up and there is an illegal alien in front of them and they're trying to get away and they have to wrestle them to the ground and put them in handcuffs so that they can take them to immigration court and then put them on a plane back to Venezuela, they have every right to do so. They don't need a warrant. And they also don't have any obligation to announce or identify themselves to any left-wing bird brain standing on the periphery with their iPhone in their hand and their their grocery bags in hand and demanding that someone give them some proof that these people have the right to do what they're going to do. If you are a witness to a crime, you have a responsibility to do something about it. But if you are a federal law enforcement officer, it is your job to do something about it. If you are a bystander, you do not have a right to ask for these law enforcement officials to give you proof of anything. And you will never have the right to see a warrant because they don't have the obligation to have a warrant. If you are a bystander demanding to see a warrant and you are practicing law without a license and disrupting police duties and activities, you yourself may be arrested. We've seen it time and time again. Asking for a lawyer is something that applies once you are arrested and taken to a police station. If you are an illegal alien and you're arrested by ICE, it doesn't matter, okay? You're going to get arrested. You're going to get deported. Now, you do have a right to remain silent, but remaining silent does not negate what law enforcement has witnessed. If you commit a crime and they've got it on camera, you're going to get charged with that. Doesn't matter if you don't say anything about it. If you resist, that is also an additional crime. If you throw rocks at moving law enforcement vehicles, or you throw cinder blocks at their hoods, or you beat those vehicles with a baseball bat as they drive by, those are crimes. If you stick a stiletto blade into the wheels of a moving ICE vehicle, that is also a crime. If you do something to a federal law enforcement vehicle that leads to, I don't know, an accident then you could be arrested for attempted manslaughter. Or if it leads to a death, you could be on the hook for vehicular homicide. While all of these anti-deportation briefs are being written and submitted, they might claim that using the National Guard or the U.S. military to protect federal property has never happened before. Again, they are fundamentally misinformed. There have been a number of instances, such as the famous case, Brown versus Board of Education, where the state officials were defying the federal government, and that was in Little Rock, Arkansas. And unfortunately for them, the National Guard was deployed to ensure that young black children were allowed to integrate and go to school with young white children. So you can look back at history and tradition. You can see this all around. And I really feel personally that ICE and the federal law enforcement agencies are being way too kind to these people. I think that a lot more people need to be arrested. I don't care if you're an American citizen. If you commit a crime, then I would like to see you go to jail. Because as it stands right now, when you don't have any sort of consequences to your actions, then you're a lot more likely to commit those actions. All right, you guys. Now, let us take a look here at the Atlanta Federal Reserve. Raphael Bostic, he is the president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, or at least he was, because earlier today, he announced that he plans to retire at the end of his term in February. That opens up a vacancy. Now, sadly, Bostic was the first black and openly gay president of a regional Federal Reserve Bank, and he had been in that chair since 2017. Dr. Bostic served on the Federal Open Market Committee, but he was not a voting member this year. Now, why is Bostic retiring at the end of his term? Well, he was previously under fire for violating trading rules. You see, back in October of 2022, the Fed announced that they were looking at trades that Bostic had made during blackout periods near policy meetings. There was an internal report showing that there were 154 trades made on his behalf during those times. However, the report also indicated there was no evidence Bostic traded on insider information or had personal conflicts. However, Dr. Bostic, as a president and CEO of the Atlanta Federal Reserve, the man ought to have known better. And I would imagine that unless they got video of Dr. Bostic sitting in front of his computer on his Charles Schwab account or maybe on his Robinhood account on his phone, of course, there's going to be no evidence. But I would imagine that during those blackout periods, Bostic probably made a hefty sum. Now, there is a statement that has been released by the Atlanta Federal Reserve. Dr. Raphael Bostic, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, today announced his intention to retire. He has served with distinction since June 5th, 2017, as the 15th President and Chief Executive Officer of the Atlanta Fed. First black, first gay, first on the Federal Reserve history in its 111 years. He said, "It's been my distinct honor and privilege to lead the Atlanta Fed for these past 8.5 years. I feel incredibly fortunate to have worked with the Atlanta Fed's outstanding staff to fulfill the Federal Reserve's mission and serve the 6th District and the American people. I'm proud of what we accomplished during my tenure to turn the lofty goal of an economy that works for everyone into more of a reality, and I look forward to discovering new ways to advance that bold vision in my next chapter." Now, I'd like to say that simply because no evidence exists at this time, it doesn't mean that the evidence won't come up in the future. And considering that Bostic is leaving during the Trump administration, I have to think it's entirely possible that perhaps some background pressure was put upon him so that President Trump would get this opening. And of course, he's going to have the opportunity to nominate somebody who likely could help make the economy one that all people would be able to get ahead in. All right. Now, I'd also like to give a big hat tip to VA Secretary Doug Collins. As wasn't it Monday? Was it Monday or yesterday? Veterans Day. Yesterday was Veterans Day. Because yesterday was Veterans Day, I think that this is a clip that should have come out yesterday. But VA Secretary Doug Collins wants everybody to know what kind of a job they're doing, did they open the government? They voted to open the government back up. Yeah, they had to approve the budget. I don't know that it's actually happened, but it will happen either today or tomorrow. So that story is dead in the water. Now, Secretary Collins says that they have done quite a bit of work since coming in. And whether or not you support President Trump, I would hope that every single person watching this show, at a minimum, supports our veterans. Because regardless of what administration they might have entered the service under, they entered to serve their country. They don't enter the service to serve a leader that may or may not change every 4 years. This is about keeping America safe, and this is about supporting the underpinnings of the Constitution, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, freedom, all of that stuff. And our veterans deserve better. When my father was diagnosed with cancer, he went through the VA system. This was 2009. This was during the Obama years, and the system failed him. The medical care that he received was slow. The diagnosing was laborious, and my dad loved going to the VA because he loved being able to see his brothers, and he really respected everybody that worked there. I respected all of the doctors and the nurses that were on staff, but the bureaucracy was what failed him.
President, rightfully noted the accomplishments of this administration, what we're doing. I want to put that disability claim in perspective, Maria. That's low. That's the lowest level in 5 years. Let me put the real numbers to it. When I showed up, and we showed up in Washington with the president, it was over 260,000 in backlog of 125 days or longer. That number is now under 114,000. We had over a million pending cases. Those are under 600,000 now. We just put the emphasis where it needed to be, and that made the disability backlog go down. That means that veterans are getting their services quicker, their answers quicker, so they can move on with their life. And where we're headed next is reforming into our VHA, our medical facilities, making sure we have a streamlined approach where we can actually get the veterans the care they need, not only in the community, but in our direct care system. Things that have been overlooked for years. The VA lot to get started.
So Freya says they're libtarded in the VA bureaucracy. I'm hoping that that's changing with somebody like Doug Collins being there. And obviously, it's a big system, right? In order to clean out something like that, it's going to take some time. But I think that it's incredible in 10, 11 months in this administration, they've been able to cut the backlog in half. They are on their way to having no backlog in the very near future. Not only that, Doug Collins is beginning to open up VA clinics in rural communities all around the country so that people who don't live directly next to a VA health system hospital are still going to be able to receive care and the services that they need. And it would be great. It would be great if that happens quicker, sooner rather than later. But I just want to give credit where credit is due. All right. Now, apparently, Michelle Obama has once again made a public comment about President Trump. And this woman, or is she, doesn't know when to keep her mouth shut. She has openly said previously that the idea of Donald Trump keeps her up at night. And I think this is the one unifying factor about Donald Trump. He lives in the minds of those who hate him. And because of that, they simply cannot let their anger go. They are literally consumed with the constant barrage of Trump, Trump, Trump in their minds. This golden statue of Donald Trump lives in their brains 24 hours a day. The chronic TDS will be the death of them. And of course, there has been a criticism from the left, from the Obamas, about the expansion at the East Wing, this brand new, beautiful ballroom that President Trump has been able to get off the ground, build with private funds, not taxpayer funds, to beautify the White House as a gift to the American people so that in the future, presidents that come after President Trump can hold events at the White House and not be forced to set up a tent on a lawn or go rent a hall down the street, putting money into people's pockets that don't deserve it. This way, we can have these galas and these balls and these events at the White House, and people don't even need to spend an additional dollar. Now, Michelle Obama was in Brooklyn on November 6th. She has a new book, I guess. It's called The Look. And they also had time to film or record the next episode of the Obama's podcast, IMO. I'm assuming that means in my opinion. She said, when we talk about the East Wing, it is the heart of the work. And to denigrate it, to tear it down, to pretend like it doesn't matter, it's a reflection of how you think of that role, Obama said. She also seemed to intimate that President Trump hadn't gotten enough feedback from the First Lady. Whether the West Wing understood it or not, I used to tell them all the stuff we do on the East Wing, from the clothes I wear to family dogs, Bo and Sonny to Malia and Sasha and Grandma. Those were 5 extra approval points that he got because we provided a balance. Well, President Trump returned the favor and made a comment about Michelle Obama. He said that the $250 million price tag is used as criticism, but again, this was private money. This is President Trump's own money. The East Wing is being spent by private donors. It's a $300 million building. It's going to be the most beautiful anywhere in the world. They had an event at the White House the other day with tables. They could hold 79 people. Now you have President Xi from China, or you have some big state event. We have no place to have it. You know what they did? They put a tent on the lawn. It was a low section because that's the only section you have. If it rained, you were sitting in 6 inches of water. It was a disaster. That building, the East Wing, needed to be renovated. It was renovated 20 times, including adding a floor to the top, which was terrible. It looked like hell. It had nothing to do with the original building, and I didn't want to sacrifice a great ballroom for an okay ballroom, leaving it smack dab in the middle. So we decided to do it right. President Trump is a builder. The man made his living in construction, okay? He had great ideas that came to fruition, and today the name Trump emblazons the skyline of different nations around the world. And on top of that, the Obamas spent hundreds of millions of American taxpayer dollars when they fully renovated the White House because they said it was a dump when they moved in. So spare me your indignation, Michelle Obama. Now we're going to get into some scandals, some government scandals. Let's talk about Jim Comey. So it appears that Jim Comey's lawyers used doctored transcripts when they provided these documents to the court in his ongoing case of perjury. Now, Paul Sperry from Real Clear Politics has been sharing his observations on these documents that were provided by Comey and his legal team to the courts in this perjury case. One observation is pretty shocking. According to Sperry, when presenting evidence in a motion to the court as part of this case, his legal team, James Comey's legal team, altered 2 words in a transcript from his 2020 Senate testimony to make it seem as if Senator Cruz had asked Comey a key question that he didn't actually ask him during the hearing. Now, that seems to me to be a fairly bald-faced violation of ethics on behalf of his lawyers and a pox upon the court. So, right here, the following question was asked. Can you alter words in a transcript that you present as evidence in a trial? Well, the answer is no. A defendant cannot alter words in a transcript that is presented as evidence in a trial. The transcripts are the official records that accurately capture what was said during a legal proceeding. Altering them would count as fraud, and that could lead to serious legal consequences, including charges like contempt of court or tampering with evidence. So Jim Comey's lawyers need to be aware of this. I'm certain that the DOJ is aware of it. They also apparently used a movie to support their arguments in Comey's case. His legal team cited a movie to support the argument that President Trump did not have to directly instruct Halligan to indict Comey. A ruler need not take the form of literal instructions. See Beckett, a 1964 film. Will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest? They reference this film as if it is prior court precedent. I've never heard of anybody doing that. Now, Comey and his legal team will also likely to soon become co-conspirators and co-defendants of course, claim they did nothing wrong, but you'll remember that when they were doing nothing wrong, they also hid their identities. They used burner email accounts and fake names when they were colluding on how they were going to be leaking this information to the media. James Comey and Dan Richman claim they were doing nothing wrong when they leaked sensitive info to their New York Times handmaiden, Michael Schmidt, the husband of Nicole Wallace from MSDNC. Yet they both used aliases in their emails and texts. Comey, as you probably remember, posed as Reinhold Niebuhr, and Richman posed as Michael Garcia. Now, also, of course, part of Comey's argument is that this prosecution is vindictive. This is some kind of a payback for Comey not liking President Trump. And Comey's attorneys have to do much more than they have to date. To prove this vindictive prosecution, Comey's lawyers have got to show a lot more than simply posts from President Trump on Truth Social. They are going to have to show direct evidence, and that evidence would have to prove that Halligan acted with genuine animus and is bringing these charges solely to punish. Comey, of course, did not do anything wrong in his own eyes. Well, of course, that's as part of his defense, but as far as the government is concerned, as far as we can show, Comey actually broke the law when he lied, when he committed perjury. And then, of course, there's also the question of these other potential crimes that Comey may have committed. This is a fairly high legal barrier that Comey's team is going to have to come up against if they hope to keep him out of prison. But the truth of the matter is, I don't think that they're going to be able to do it because the evidence that they would need to show simply does not exist. All right. Now, I'm also wondering, this is caffeine. I was thinking that was nicotine. I was like, 50 milligrams of nicotine. That's going to be a banger. All right. Now, you know about Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff, as a representative in California, maintained a primary residence in the state of Maryland. He also, for a period of time, maintained dual primary residences in California and Maryland, and received the tax benefit of each of those primary residences. The only problem is you can only have one primary residence, and you cannot have a primary residence in a state that is not the state in which you are elected to serve. It would appear that Eric Swalwell, the lover boy of Fang Fang, has also done the exact same thing. Now, Joel Gilbert, the wunderkind who did the documentaries about the Obamas and also worked with Sam Anter to expose Letitia James for her mortgage-related crimes. And, of course, he's done a fair amount on the Adam Schiff case as well. He has done the exact same thing for Eric Swalwell. So, with all of the controversies that Eric Swalwell has already faced, including his alleged affair with a Chinese spy, Fang Fang, or his removal from the Intelligence Committee for National Security Concerns, to his live fart on air during a 2019 interview with Chris Matthews on Hardball, now we learn that he is potentially ineligible to serve in Congress. So, even though he is a congressman for California's 15th district, he claims the hometown of Livermore on his official on his official U.S. House of Representatives profile. Swalwell has declared that Washington, D.C., where he owns property, is his primary residence. You actually have a public deed of trust for Eric Swalwell's D.C. home. It's at 209 South Street Northeast. It's dated April 18th, 2022, and it confirms that this property is designated as his principal residence. That is a condition of his loan. This looks like a job for Bill Pulte. Now, take a look at this residence here. My God, that's a lot of white. I'm more of a color man myself. Lisa is also into colors, but look at that blinding interior. My God. So the deed for Eric Swalwell's primary residence in Washington, D.C. includes explicit language, which makes the borrower, that would be Eric Swalwell, liable for false or misleading statements regarding occupancy. Here we can see on the deed itself, borrower shall be in default if borrower gave materially false, misleading, or inaccurate information or statements to the lender. Material representations include borrower's occupancy of the property as borrower's principal residence. Wow. Under Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, members of the U.S. Congress must be inhabitants of the state that they represent at the time of their election. So in California, maintaining this inhabitancy makes holding tangible, verifiable ties to the state a requirement to be a representative from California. That means that Eric Swalwell would have to own or rent a residence. He would have to register to vote in the state of California. He would also have to pay state income taxes in California. And on top of that, he would also have to have a California driver's license. We've also got problems here with the California State Elections Code. Code 349, to be example. A domicile is defined as the place in which his or her habitation is fixed and the place where a person intends to return and remain. So, if Eric Swalwell's true domicile is in Washington, D.C., the city that he has declared to be his principal residence, he may no longer meet the basic requirements for being a California inhabitant. Now, public record searches have not yet revealed any home ownership or lease under the name of Eric Swalwell in the entire state of California. Certainly not in the 15th district where he is currently an elected representative. So the address most often associated with his background in Livermore, that's 320 Michelle Court. It's only a 3-bedroom, 1,350 square foot home that belongs to another family, the Mrzyrka family. I can't even say it. MRZYWKA family. They've actually lived there continuously since 2008. So that makes it highly unlikely that Eric Swalwell currently resides there. It makes it even less likely that he resides there because he actually lives in Washington, D.C. Now, the failure to maintain a legitimate residence in California, it exposes Eric Swalwell to a number of problems, both legal and ethical, but even more importantly, electoral. Because a false declaration of residency risks tax violations, misrepresentation to lenders, as we can see in the title deed to his D.C. property, and challenges to his eligibility for re-election. Politically, the revelation of a Washington, D.C. principal residence undermines any credibility that Eric Swalwell might still maintain. It also might fuel accurate accusations of hypocrisy, especially since Eric Swalwell rose to power by attacking his predecessor, Pete Stark, for being, quote, out of touch with the district because of Stark's residency outside of California. And also, in the 2012 campaign, Eric Swalwell sent mailers around mocking Stark as missing from his constituents. It sounds famously familiar to what we're seeing right now with Eric Swalwell, what we saw with Adam Schiff, and what we see with a lot of people who are otherwise elected to office in the House of Representatives. So Eric Swalwell's inability to maintain a California home might stem from a couple of things, but likely it could be personal financial mismanagement. And we know this because his 2025 financial disclosure report paints a pretty bleak financial picture. Now, everybody knows he earns $174,000 a year. He's been in Congress for 13 years, but he has, during this time, failed to pay down his student loans. I think much like Ilhan Omar, he was just hoping that student loans would be completely forgiven, so why would you want to pay them? And they also have apparently identified credit card debt that Eric Swalwell is owing. And he even cashed out his pension. I wonder what he cashed out his pension for. So his debts have remained largely unchanged since the first time he ran back in 2011. His student loan remains between $50,000 and $100,000. His credit card balances are still between $15,000 and $50,000. He's got cards with both American Express and Chase Bank. We can actually see on his financial disclosure form right here. To be a sitting member of Congress and to have such persistent financial instability, it raises some questions about the judgment, responsibility, and ethics that Eric Swalwell has in his heart. I think perhaps he was hoping at one point that Fang Fang was going to be his ticket to paying off his debts, but who knows? It also might explain why Eric Swalwell cannot afford a home in California. Like Adam Schiff and Letitia James, both they have now faced scrutiny over conflicting primary residency claims, and Eric Swalwell has built his political brand on attacking Donald Trump. Maybe now he's going to come to regret that after Bill Pulte sends him a letter and pays him a visit. After the events of January 6th, Eric Swalwell loudly demanded the removal of President Trump, and he later filed a civil lawsuit which accused President Trump, Trump Jr., Rudy Giuliani, and Mo Brooks of inciting a Capitol breach. To this day, Swalwell continues to LARP and portray himself as a moral authority. He insists that President Trump cannot defend democratic ideals like the peaceful transfer of power. All at the same time, while preaching accountability, Eric Swalwell appears unwilling or unable to meet the most basic standards of his own office. There appears to be a lack of truthfulness and transparency about where he actually lives. I think it's time for Eric Swalwell to come clean, don't you? Don't you think Eric Swalwell should have to answer the question of exactly where it is that he actually lives? If he does actually live in California, he would need to provide evidence of that. And it also appears that Eric Swalwell is likely going to be unable to do any of those things, because if he doesn't have the money to do anything other than own this condo in Washington, D.C., there's no way he's going to have an apartment or anything else in the state of California. You lazy bum. All right. We are now going to get into the meat and potatoes of today's show, and that's going to be the latest deep state attack against President Trump. The deep state is now attempting to cast off any aspersions that may have been brought up yesterday for the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative's level of corruption, all stemming from the Clinton family themselves. And today, they deceptively, through the House Democrats, released a tranche of Epstein emails. They mention Trump, and so therefore, Trump must be in bed with Epstein. However, as I'm about to show you, this has backfired tremendously on the Democrats. So, this so-called tranche of correspondence from the Epstein estate does include some information that was already publicly available. It doesn't mean, however, that the Democrats respect you enough to assume that you can figure that out. They claim that this release of emails is a blow against the White House's Epstein cover-up. The three unrelated emails that they point to range in dates from 2011 to 2019. Now, the White House has responded through Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. She says the Democrats have selectively leaked emails to the liberal media to create a fake narrative to smear President Trump. As I have said on so many different occasions, the hoax is the Democrats' framing of President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein's relationship. This administration, this White House, has been the most transparent in history. They have released more documents. They have given more access to the press. President Trump has done more interviews. And it's only because of this White House that all of this Epstein stuff is coming out. The DOJ has repeatedly asked for grand jury testimony to be revealed, but the people, the judges who have refused to reveal it, have their own sordid connections to this story. So that's why they don't want it out. All right, so the very first email, and this relates to my use of Virginia Giuffre on the thumbnail today. Now, need I remind you, Virginia Giuffre tragically passed away, or at the very least was removed from this story earlier this year. So Virginia Giuffre is no longer alive to speak for herself. And that's what the Democrats are attempting to take advantage of. Now, in this particular email, it's a correspondence between Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. It's dated April 2nd, 2011. Just around 2 p.m., Epstein writes to Maxwell, and he says, "I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump." And then the name of a victim is redacted. That redacted name is Virginia Giuffre. So Virginia Giuffre spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. Now, this email, the Democrats had hoped would implicate Trump in some larger grand conspiracy. But what it actually does is exonerate him. And it also seems to step all over the legacy of Virginia Giuffre and her own prior testimony that President Trump had nothing to do with any of the disgusting activity that was taking place between Jeffrey Epstein, his wealthy benefactors, and the various properties where he would abuse young victims, along with Ghislaine Maxwell. I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. Maxwell responds by saying, I have been thinking about that. So why did the Dems cover up the name of Virginia Giuffre? Her name was not redacted in the original documents. What the Democrats had hoped to insinuate is that a victim spent time with Donald Trump. And, of course, because somebody who was victimized by Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell spending time with President Trump, of course, for the simple-minded out there who have a lack of critical thinking or a lack of knowledge about the true nature of this story, they're automatically going to make this insinuation in their head. Oh, my God, Donald Trump, Epstein victim, must be something bad. However, Virginia Giuffre's own testimony again has exonerated President Trump of any wrongdoing on so many different occasions. Her testimony said that President Trump did not partake in any sex with us and that Donald Trump never flirted with me. So essentially, the Democrats are insinuating that Virginia Giuffre's own testimony must have been a lie, and that now we believe this email, which doesn't even say anything about Donald Trump having done something bad. In fact, it's questioning why it is that Donald Trump's name has not come up in any respect. It's not because Donald Trump had done something inappropriate with Virginia Giuffre, but it's likely because Donald Trump was the whistleblower that was responsible for Jeffrey Epstein getting wrapped up in the case in the first place. The dog that hasn't barked is Trump. The reason he hasn't been mentioned is not because he did something wrong and was paying people off, but because he didn't do anything wrong. And he also went to the police and the FBI about this entire thing. I'm sure you remember Speaker Mike Johnson saying Donald Trump was an FBI whistleblower. Also, in March 2011, just before this email was sent, the BBC had reported that Prince Andrew, who at that time was still the Duke of York, came in for a steady stream of criticism over his friendship with U.S. tycoon Jeffrey Epstein. That may have been something that concerned Epstein and Epstein and Maxwell in the email. But the phrase, the dog that hasn't barked, is a common phrase derived from a Sherlock Holmes story, The Adventure of Silver Blaze. It's a popular story written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, in that story, a champion racehorse killed its trainer in self-defense. that thwarted a plot to sabotage the horse. So Sherlock Holmes deducted that the dog didn't bark at the intruder trying to steal the horse because it was someone familiar to the stables that the dog actually recognized. So the saying suggests the absence of an expected event, and that lack of action is itself a significant clue. And given that the Epstein says that Trump has never once been mentioned by the police and that Epstein is 75% there, it suggests that Epstein believes that Trump was likely an informant, and that the dog that didn't bark and the dog that didn't bark, and is therefore not mentioned by law enforcement because of confidentiality. They weren't going to mention Trump in any respect because he was a confidential witness against Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, this was also, again, speculated by the attorney who represented Virginia Giuffre in 2018, Bradley Edwards. I've played this clip on the show a number of times. He gave an interview to an unfriendly media publication who was trying to get President Trump to be implicated in the Jeffrey Epstein story. And Bradley Edwards said at that time that President Trump was the only person who was ever affiliated in any way with Jeffrey Epstein, who had volunteered to talk to Edwards and to give him everything that he knew. All right. Now, here we have a series of videos. We're just going to open this up on X. First, we have Speaker Johnson, where he says Trump was an informant. Then you have Bradley Edwards talking about his experience with President Trump. And then again, Bradley Edwards earlier this year, again, talking about his experience with President Trump. I should also mention to you that President Trump was the only person who had any sort of affiliation with Jeffrey Epstein, because Jeffrey Epstein also lived in Palm Beach. Jeffrey Epstein had been a member at Mar-a-Lago. He was the only person who, prior to Jeffrey Epstein being revealed as a pedophile, cut him out of his life in every respect. There were plenty of other people out there, high-profile politicians, bankers, CEOs, tech giants, who even after Jeffrey Epstein was exposed as a pedophile, they continued to associate with him.
He's not saying that what Epstein did is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant to try to take this stuff down. The president knows and has great sympathy for the women who have suffered these unspeakable harms. It's detestable to him. He and I have spoken about this as recently as 24 hours ago.
About President Trump is that he is the only person who, in 2009, when I served a lot of subpoenas on a lot of people, or at least gave notice to some pretty connected people that I wanted to talk to them, he is the only person who picked up the phone and said, let's just talk. I'll give you as much time as you want. I'll tell you what you need to know, and was very helpful in the information that he gave, and gave no indication whatsoever that he was involved in anything untoward whatsoever, but had good information that checked out and that helped us, and that we didn't have to take a deposition of him. President Trump, back in 2009 and several times after that, he didn't think that it was a hoax then. In fact, he helped me. He got on the phone. He told me things that were helping our investigation. Now, our investigation wasn't looking into him, but he was helping us then. He didn't treat this as a hoax. So at this point in time, I would hope that he would revert back to what he was saying to get elected, which is, I want transparency. This about face that occurred, none of us understand it. In fact, I don't understand how this is an issue that's even up for debate. How do you not stand behind these women after you've heard their stories and know that hundreds of them were abused, and it was only because files are being kept in secrecy? The world should know who he is, who protected him.
So those words by Bradley Edwards obviously are coming back to bite him in the ass, because he did not have the 40,000-foot view of what President Trump was doing. Now, President Trump's only public comments were about the Democrat hoax, the deep state hoax, to try to associate him with Jeffrey Epstein, because this entire time the DOJ and the Oversight Committee have been working to get as much of this information released as possible. Right now, we have more Jeffrey Epstein files than we have ever had at any point in the future. Now, these next two emails are even more damning for the deep state and the Democrats, because what they essentially do is implicate journalist and author Michael Wolff, who wrote a book about Jeffrey Epstein, in what appears to be a complicated and concerted plot to perhaps blackmail President Trump or to destroy him. Now, here, again, they redact the name of Virginia Giuffre. Virginia Giuffre Mar-a-Lago, then a whole sentence is redacted. We don't know what was said here. Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. So there is an insinuation here that Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein was molesting girls. Now, he says he was never a member of Mar-a-Lago, but he was an attendee. All right. So prior to January 2019, the references to this claim were false. We knew that Trump had kicked Jeffrey Epstein out or he had banned him. We never heard the phrase to asking him to resign because Mar-a-Lago is a private club, but not all patrons of Mar-a-Lago are members. There is a distinct difference between banning and asking to resign. Either way, Trump made it clear to Epstein that he didn't want him around. Now, the phrase here, of course he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were poaching employees from Mar-a-Lago to embroil them in the trafficking scheme they had. And one of those people was obviously Virginia Giuffre. President Trump said, stop, okay? You can't do that. I don't want you doing that. And of course, they didn't listen. And eventually, that was one of the reasons why they were asked to stay out. But this last email from Michael Wolff is the most interesting. You have a correspondence between Epstein and Wolff on December 15th, 2015. This is the day of the GOP presidential debate where President Trump destroyed everybody on stage. Wolff sends an email tipping off Jeffrey Epstein that Donald Trump may be asked about his relationship with you either on air or in a scrum afterwards. Epstein responds, if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it would be? So then the day after, Michael Wolff responds, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency, meaning blackmail. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and he's gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime. Now, Wolff, for this book, had done hours and hours of interviews with Jeffrey Epstein. They had spoken specifically about Donald Trump, but also about many other political figures. However, this exchange is pretty concerning because, again, Wolff suggests using Trump's denials of being on the plane or in the House as political currency and using it as a way to hang him or to control him. It essentially looks like they were plotting how they might be able to blackmail President Trump and use it to their advantage. Now, the ranking member of the Dem Oversight Committee stated, the more Donald Trump tries to cover up the Epstein files, the more we uncover. These latest emails and correspondence raise glaring questions about what else the White House is hiding and the nature of the relationship between Epstein and the president. Well, the clear answer here is that there are no glaring questions because, again, it is this administration that has released the most information about Jeffrey Epstein. And we also have the public statements from people like Virginia Giuffre on the record. Now, there is another email from Michael Wolff in October of 2016, just before Trump is elected president. And you can see here, again, Michael Wolff appears to be colluding with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And he says this time, there's an opportunity to come forward this week and talk about Trump in such a way that could garner you great sympathy and help finish him. Interested? Isn't that interesting? So here we are. For a long time, Michael Wolff was working with Jeffrey Epstein. His relationship was completely different from what Michael Wolff had previously stated. He made it sound like he just wrote a book about Jeffrey Epstein. He just did some interviews with him. But they appear to be highly connected and very well established in a friendship. So here is Virginia Giuffre's own words, contradicting everything that the Democrats have said. In her testimony, she said, Trump didn't partake in any sex with us, and it's not true that he flirted with me. I didn't see him have sex with any of the girls. Trump was never in the presence of other girls. Trump knew Virginia Giuffre because she had worked for him at Mar-a-Lago. Her father brought her into Trump's office at Mar-a-Lago, and he spoke to both of them. He told her father that he must be very proud of Virginia because she was a wonderful young woman. Now, here is another email. We've actually seen this one before. It's an exchange between Jeffrey Epstein and Barack Hussein Obama's White House counsel, Catherine Rumler. This is dated from September 19th, 2014, just after Barack Obama had left the White House. Oh, no, excuse me. This is while he was still in the White House because he didn't leave until President Trump took office in January of 2017. So Jeffrey Epstein writes to Catherine Rumler, Barack Obama's private counsel, and he says, "You need to talk to boss." The boss is obviously Barack Hussein Obama. She replies and says, "Agreed, but I need to be prepared to say yes before I talk to him." Jeffrey Epstein responds, "Understood. It comes down to high risk reward, low risk reward, professional, emotional, and financial." This, again, to me, sounds as if there is some level of influence that Jeffrey Epstein is attempting to exert on the current White House administration. Catherine Rumler replies, "Most girls do not have to worry about this crap." And disgustingly, Jeffrey Epstein responds, "Girls? Careful, I will renew an old habit." This week, and then he goes through a list of powerful people. I think that these are people that he's likely meeting with. Thiel, Summers, Bill Burns, Gordon Brown, Jagland, Council of Europe and Nobel Chairman, Mongolia Press, Hardeep Pure, Boris, Gates, Jabor, Qatar, Sultan, Dubai, Koslin, Harvard, Icon Black, Woody Allen. You are a welcome guest at any. Also, if you think there are interesting people in town, everyone here for the climate summit, Clinton, Security Council. Holy shit, I'm on redacted for the next 30 minutes. Catherine Rumler finishes the email by saying, "Doesn't look like you are prioritizing your schedule very effectively. How are you going to manage all that? This is Unga week, so the boss will be in town too. I'll be here all week. You may get sick of me. Just sat down on the train, so can't talk freely." Clearly, Jeffrey Epstein had a relationship with the Obama White House in the same way he had a relationship with the Clinton White House. Now, it should be no surprise then that, of course, Bill Clinton attempted to have a report in Vanity Fair squashed about Jeffrey Epstein and his sex trafficking. It's also funny that the mainstream media, which is the deep state media, is now talking about the Democrats' framing of these new emails, whereas before they actually reported on Bill Clinton's personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Here is a story from 2024 discussing a 2011 email written by Virginia Giuffre, where she talks about Bill Clinton squashing the Vanity Fair story about Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking. Take a listen.
New details this morning. Hundreds of new pages have been unsealed in a lawsuit connected to convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. The victim alleges that former President Clinton pressured Vanity Fair not to run a story on Epstein. The pages also shed new light on how Epstein's victims were recruited and what happened to them. CNN's Gene Cesaris joins us now. And Gene, we're talking about 900 pages here, so there's a lot to go through. What new details have come out?
Well, they came out last night, combing through them. And, you know, this all stems from a 2015 civil suit brought by Virginia Giuffre against Ghislaine Maxwell. And Virginia Giuffre had wanted her story to come out. She wanted a book. And so she became very close with a reporter out of Britain. And this reporter was encouraging her to go to the Vanity Fair magazine, to have them do an article on it. And here is what, in a newly undisclosed email from 2011, here's what Virginia Giuffre says. She says, considering that B. Clinton walked into VF, Vanity Fair, and threatened them not to write sex trafficking articles about his good friend, J.E., Jeffrey Epstein. So she didn't want to do it.
Bill Clinton, longtime friend and associate, visited the island. That email that Michael Wolff was writing to Jeffrey Epstein, that was when Sean Hannity asked Donald Trump about Bill Clinton, and he said, oh, he's going to have a lot of problems about that island. He said that publicly right there. Now, you also probably remember when ABC News sat on their own Jeffrey Epstein story for 3 years and also decided not to run it because it implicated Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew.
For 3 years, I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton. We had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. And I had it all 3 years ago.
Isn't that interesting? So, yes, Joan, you are correct. I mean, the framing of this, the timing of this is to try to make Trump look bad as if he's done something wrong. But the thing is that it's not working. It won't work. It is failing. Because even in their attempts to try to frame Donald Trump, all they are doing is making themselves look even worse. Now, here is another email. I mean, you wonder why the media wasn't running this story. Well, Jeffrey Epstein had the media in his pocket in the same way he had the presidents in his pocket, in the same way he had business and banking in his pocket. This is an email to Jeffrey Epstein from 2017, 9/27/2017, from a Financial Times and New York Times reporter, Landon Thomas. And it says here, he is digging around again. Not clear if it's another book or expanded paperback version. Was asking me all sorts of questions about why you hired Ken Starr. I told him I had no idea. I think he is doing some Trump-related digging, too. Anyway, for what it's worth. So here you have a reporter warning Jeffrey Epstein that a former NYPD detective, John Connolly, was looking into him and was digging around and asking questions. Well, I wonder if he was doing that for the upcoming investigation, which very quickly locked Jeffrey Epstein in a child trafficking case. Now, here's another example. CNN. First of all, Brian Stelter from CNN, playing his role for the deep state media establishment, says, Jeffrey Epstein mentioned Trump in private emails is the lead story across most major news websites this morning. Nothing on the Fox News homepage yet, though, and no mention of Fox News TV yet either, per my Snapstream search. Well, that's because the news media outlets that are running the story are playing the part that they have been dictated by the deep state media establishment. Now, President Trump had been essentially misquoted by CNN in one interview that President Trump spoke about Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton from the Oval Office. He mentioned that Epstein had taken Bill Clinton to the island 28 times. When CNN reported on President Trump's statement, they cleverly edited it to remove any reference to Bill Clinton and the island.
And by the way, I never went to the island, and Bill Clinton went there supposedly 28 times. I never went to the island, but Larry Summers, I hear, went there. He was the head of Harvard. And many other people that are very big people. Nobody ever talks about them. I never had the privilege of going to his island, and I did turn it down, but a lot of people in Palm Beach were invited to his island. In one of my very good moments, I turned it down. I didn't want to go to his island. Yeah.
President Trump says he never visited Jeffrey Epstein's private island. Listen.
I never had the privilege of going to his island, and I did turn it down, but a lot of people in Palm Beach were invited to his island. In one of my very good moments, I turned it down. I didn't want to go to his island.
Yeah, totally just ignoring the fact that Bill Clinton had been there on many different occasions. All right, now, finally, Caroline Leavitt addressed this earlier today because CBS News, playing their own deep state media role, asked the question, did President Trump ever spend hours at Jeffrey Epstein's house with the victim? Well, of course, we've already gone over this. That victim is Virginia Giuffre. The Democrats removed her name from the email because they know everybody already knows, it's well established that Virginia Giuffre has already exonerated Donald Trump. And now that this poor woman is no longer here, she can't come out and say it publicly.
Did the president ever spend hours at Jeffrey Epstein's house with a victim?
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep. And this email you refer to with the name of a victim that was unredacted now and has since been reported on in this room, so I will go ahead and say it, Virginia Giuffre. And it was CBS's own reporting, Ouija, that recently wrote that Miss Giuffre maintained, and God rest her soul, that she maintained that there was nothing inappropriate she ever witnessed, that President Trump was always extremely professional and friendly to her. And so I think it's a question worth asking the Democrat Party, and you should all go ask them after this briefing, of why they chose to redact that name of a victim who has already publicly made statements about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is unfortunately no longer with us.
And everybody knows why they are not going to ask them. I mean, they're already in on the scam. They're not going to ask because they don't want the answer. They want the insinuation. They want the attempt to put a black eye on President Trump. But again, it's not working, and it won't work. All right, before we continue, I have a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, if you still haven't tried 1775 coffee yet, you still have a shot. There are some of those starter kits available. You got to get that bold, dark roast that hits hard like a left hook, the smooth medium roast, and their Vitality Mushroom Coffee for clean energy and laser focus without the crash. All of it from the highest quality beans you're going to get, small batch, toxin, and mold-free. Plus, you're also going to get a free gold spoon clip, a free strong frother, and a free black 1775 tumbler. It's $170 worth of coffee and gear, and it's all yours for only $99. This is for the people who have been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble and wonder if it's actually worth it. Spoiler, it is. So head on over to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. You will not regret it. Thank you so much to 1775 Coffee. All right, getting back into the stories. I think we have sufficiently debunked the lies of the deep state media establishment. Let's continue debunking lies of the deep state establishment, beginning here with Chairman of the Select Subcommittee, Representative Barry Loudermilk. His committee is investigating those lingering questions surrounding January 6th. That includes the mysterious pipe bomber who, despite the article from The Blaze, has yet to be identified. And he has also sent a letter seeking to question the Secret Service detail for Kamala Harris, because as we have spoken about before, they either didn't see the pipe bomb initially or realized that it wasn't something to worry about. And then, of course, they also deleted everything on their phones. It sounds a little fishy. The January 6th video released in August of 2024 4 shows a man exiting a D.C. Metro Police vehicle, carrying a bag towards the exact location of the DNC pipe bomb at 12:51 p.m. on January 6th, just 15 minutes before that explosive device was discovered by another officer. But of course, the FBI says that the device was left at some point in the evening. Now here, take a look at this. This is the video that we got in August of last year. So over here on the right, where that dot is, that's allegedly where the pipe bomb is. You've got the police vehicle that shows up right here. Someone gets out with a bag. He points to where the pipe bomb was later discovered, and he walks over there. And then he ends up walking back, and the bag is suspiciously empty. Now, if there was a pipe bomb here at this time, this place was crawling with Capitol Police officers. Of course, if you guys have ever seen the Secret Service in action, I mean, they show up with their protectee and they do a sweep of the area because they want to make sure that there's nothing there. But in this instance, apparently they didn't bother to do that. Then he walks away. The bag appears to be totally empty, flat as a pancake, swinging freely. Walks over to the car, gets in. He's like, all right, everything's good. We can now send somebody over there in a few minutes, and we'll have them discover the so-called pipe bomb. So, this police officer, many have assumed, may have placed this so-called pipe bomb next to the park bench. And obviously, the Secret Service should have seen this in their sweep of the building before Kamala Harris arrived that day. There was also a bomb-sniffing dog that was brought to that location earlier in the day, also did not detect the bomb. And then we also got this footage of the dog somehow missing this pipe bomb. We don't need to watch that, but trust me, there is a dog. It sniffs right where this bomb supposedly is, does not find it. That's weird. And then, of course, we had the Secret Service agents who, once the bomb was discovered, they seemed to not really care about the bomb, even though Kamala Harris, their detailee, was right there with them. She arrives at 11:25 that morning, and again, they don't find the bomb. It probably was not planted until that police officer arrived some 90 minutes later. You had dozens of vehicles that came and went. And the FBI, of course, still has not identified the person who is responsible. And I think that it's worth mentioning that even though that article from The Blaze came out, the FBI not talking about this leads me to believe that perhaps that person is not it. There is new information about the people who have been implicated in that story, and Julie Kelly has released that. We'll go over that in a minute. But Loudermilk has sent a letter to the current Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, because he wants to question Kamala Harris's Secret Service detail, the people who are actually there at the DNC when the authorities discovered this bomb. He sent this letter on January 6th. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris arrived at the DNC at 11:25 a.m. In preparation for her arrival, at least 10 Secret Service agents conducted a sweep of the premises around 8:30 a.m. This included the use of 2 canine units, yet the units did not detect the pipe bomb. How is it that the bomb-sniffing dogs missed this so-called pipe bomb? So Loudermilk is asking for all documents and communications referring or related to cell phone migration, system upgrade, or any other process or act by which employees of the Secret Service had their phones wiped of all electronic communications in the January to April 2021 timeline. I can't wait to see it. All right, couple of thank yous from over on Rumble. Surter had said, I'm using the VA right now. The bureaucracy is still messed up and the lower level employees know it. Think they need to streamline the top of the heap and hire more at the bottom. And then Trisha says, Zach, you aware that you have 6 years worth of videos on YouTube? Yes, I am. I didn't see them when you first started streaming there again. So When I first started streaming to YouTube, I was on the backup channel where there were no videos. But yes, most of the videos that I had on YouTube came back when they restored me. Several of them are still not there, and I'll never get them back. They were essentially removed by YouTube. So yeah, I'm aware that there are videos over there. All right, so Julie Kelly says, I spoke this morning with the individual believed to be person of interest 3 in the FBI's original pipe bomb investigation. She says, I'm not going to name that individual because I'm going to protect his privacy since he found out today by me that he had been under FBI surveillance for allowing another individual, person of interest 2, to use his Metro card to travel to D.C. to the Stop the Steal events of January 5th and 6th. So person of interest 2, according to a congressional report published last year, was seen on security cameras on the morning of January 5th, photographing a dumpster next to the location where the RNC pipe bomb would later be planted. In the days after January 6th, the FBI considered person of interest 2's movements to be highly suspicious and considered person of interest 2 as a possible accomplice to the bomber. Both person of interest 2 and person of interest 3 were placed under physical surveillance by the FBI's Washington field office. Person of interest 2 told investigators in an interview on January 19th, 2021, that he had traveled to D.C. to attend First Amendment activities on Capitol Hill on January 5th, and throughout that day, person of interest 2 photographed objects bearing numerals, including doors, dumpsters, and other objects, and intended to use these photographs in a book he was writing. Both men were ruled out as suspects by late January 2021. Person of interest 3 is a 66-year-old man currently employed by the Air Force. He's that civilian Air Force employee I mentioned previously. Here is what he told me today about the use of his Metro card by his friend, person of interest 2, who he has known for more than 55 years. I have a friend who came up for the January 6th Stop the Steal protest. He lives out of state. I've known him since 1969. We went to elementary and high school together. He's, from my understanding, not affiliated with anything illegal or immoral. He's kind of like an evangelist, a religious educator who goes all around the world preaching the gospel, but he's very Republican and very pro-Trump. He is probably 67 years old now. He was 63 on January 6th. He came up a day before, or a couple of days before the January 6th date, and I took him to the Metro. He stayed at my house. I took him to the Metro, and I let him borrow my Metro card. I have an extra Metro card. I have one that I use to ride the Metro every day and one that I keep as my personal thing. This was during the pandemic, so I was working from home the entire time. So he went downtown the day prior to January 6th, and he was downtown on January 6th. I know he was doing some type of journaling for this event. I know he posted some stuff on Facebook. He was keeping a log telling everybody all about the events and activities that took place. And then I think on the 7th of January, I took him back to Dulles to catch his flight. He came up again for the inauguration this year, and I let him stay at my house again. Now, that relates to my friend who I've known since elementary school, who I grew up with. I live next door to this individual who supposedly is identified as the pipe bomber from everything that I've heard. I've lived in this house in Falls Church, Virginia since 2003. In 2021, they had moved in the year before, her and a gentleman. I knew them purely in passing exchanges, pleasantries on the street. I never went into their house, so I don't have any idea about their political leanings in any way, shape, or form. I've been contacted, and I did look into the paper, and when a picture of this supposed person came up, I said, yes, that looks like her. All I can say is there's 2 people involved in this that I know. My friend, who I went to elementary school and high school together, who asked for a favor to let him stay at my house during the rally. As it relates to this lady, the policeman, other than her living next door to me, I have no involvement with her in any way, shape, or form. It was my understanding that she worked for the Metropolitan Police Department, and that's all I know, and they were not here that long. They only live next door to me. I will have much more to say on this shortly. She continues by saying, the allegations in the blaze, the deceptive and inconsistent framing by Seraphin and his acolytes, which I will get to soon, including his suggestion person of interest 2 was the alleged pipe bomber's boyfriend, and this so-called whistleblower report prompted by Tom Massey will rely on the notion that the FBI pulled surveillance of these two men to cover up for the pipe bomber neighbor. But as the man told me today, the true account of what happened is very straightforward. And I can tell you after speaking with him, he is extremely sincere, talked very plainly about what happened over those few days, and had no idea, or his friend, that they had been the subject of the initial bomber investigation. That is why surveillance of both men ended, not some batshit conspiracy theory promoted by the likes of the Blaze and the Suspendables that somehow the FBI knew the neighbor was the bomber and pulled the agents off the case. So there we go. That is the latest on the pipe bomber investigation. I sincerely hope that the FBI can come up with something in the very near future. Now, also related to January 6th, and my good friend, Eagle Ed Martin, who is the weaponization czar and the pardon attorney for the United States, he is speaking with Rudy Giuliani after he mentioned that he had spoken to Rudy Giuliani yesterday about where this investigation is going. Now, because it's an ongoing investigation and more will be revealed in the very near future, Ed Martin can only say so much. Take a listen.
Maybe that's all going to come out. Do you think so, Ted? It looks
Yeah,
that way.
yeah, I do. And I'm on the weaponization working group, and I'm confident that we're going to get the truth out. I really am. I'm confident there's going to be more accountability, even on the topics you're talking about. I'm very confident. I'm not going to comment beyond that.
Well, I'll just tell you.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you so you don't miss it that I have maybe that's all going to come out. Do you think so, Ted? It looks
yes.
All right. So he can't say anything else because there is an actual ongoing investigation to bring the perpetrators of the grand conspiracy to justice. And as it was stated the other day, this opens the door to the 2020 election. That's why January 6th happened. We will learn more in the coming days and weeks. I love Ed Martin. The man is a genius and a true patriot. All right. Now, I also told you earlier this week that Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon had mentioned that she was going to be looking into the events of the TPUSA event that was foiled by Antifa terrorists at Berkeley. And now the announcement has been made that the U.S. Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division has officially launched a full-scale investigation into the University of California at Berkeley because the school failed to protect conservative students and guests that were attending the TPUSA event Monday night and watched as it erupted into chaos. So yesterday, a letter was sent by Harmeet Dillon notifying UC Berkeley President James B. Milliken and the Board of Regents that the DOJ is investigating the university's handling of this incident and potential violations of federal civil rights laws. I don't know who that is. Nope. Okay. And violations of the First and 14th Amendments. So she said mob assault and thuggish intimidation of attendees exercising their First Amendment rights are unacceptable. The DOJ letter specifically cites potential breaches of a former settlement from 2018, Young America's Foundation versus Napolitano, which required UC Berkeley to uphold free speech rights and ensure adequate security for conservative speakers. The letter demands the university preserve all records related to the event. That includes all communications between campus officials and student groups, all security policies, manuals, and staffing records for November 10th. Hang on, I got to jump past all of this. All video, audio, or digital recordings from the UC equipment or personnel, all complaints, incident reports, and investigations connected to the violence. They're also going to be reviewing whether or not Berkeley's repeated pattern of hostility towards conservative events, combined with their leniency towards left-wing demonstrators, it constitutes systemic viewpoint discrimination. So you may or may not have seen, but there was Antifa protesters that set flags on fire. They started a very violent fight, and a Trump supporter was arrested. Now, there is also, hold on, there was a story from a local attorney, a local affiliate right here, where instead of honestly portraying what took place, they called this a mostly peaceful protest just as they did during the Summer of Love in 2020. This is from a local CBS affiliate in the San Francisco Bay Area. And she says that it's mostly peaceful, just in the same way this guy on CNN said it was mostly peaceful as buildings and cars were burning behind him. Let's take a look at the report because it's just so ridiculous.
Event. Our Amanda Harry is live on the scene there where protesters also showed up. We've already actually seen at least one fight break out. Amanda.
Yeah, things have been lively here. While that Turning Point USA event is still happening inside, protesters have been out here for hours. You can see them still here behind me. They have been chanting, just a very, very lively scene out here. While things have been mostly peaceful, there have been some tense moments. Earlier this evening, there was a scuffle that broke out where two men started fighting. UC Berkeley police had to break up that interaction. Later, someone was throwing smoke bombs and a car backfired, leading some of the people who were protesting to run away. The protest was put together by students organizing for liberation. Some students say they don't believe UC Berkeley should host a large Turning Point USA event like this one, but other people are happy to be here for the event.
Turning Point USA should not be here, and they are like a fascist organization, and nobody here agrees with what they are saying. And obviously Charlie Kirk has been a big issue with like a lot of college campuses and people on college campuses. So we just think obviously I didn't really follow him a lot, but knowing what he did and knowing the things that he was saying, it's just like vile and disgusting. So we don't want to support his organization, and I don't think that the Berkeley chancellor should have let them come here.
So peaceful, so loving. Obviously, it was anything other than peaceful. You can take a look right here. This poor man had his nose broken by a left-wing radical. And obviously, they're going to pay the piper on that one. Berkeley has already gotten in trouble. Now, take a look at this. Chief Michael Banks, who is a U.S. Border Patrol chief, he responds to a video that was posted by what appears to be an illegal alien who posted on his TikTok about protesting in front of an ICE facility. Take a look. Well, first of all, the response to the illegal alien is, "Hi, Jesus, we got your message. Please enjoy a one-way trip back to Mexico, courtesy of the U.S. government."
Decían que cargaba el diablo. Este video es especialmente para la migra. No intenten detenerme porque no me voy a dejar. Me voy a despedazar en ese juguete si veo.
Don't know what he's saying. He's speaking in Spanish.
A few moments later.
They got a drone over his house. They arrest him. They arrest him and then take a picture with him. Oh, that's so funny. You got to love it. All right. Now, also, in response to J.B. Pritzker and the fake news that Greg Bovino and Operation Midway Blitz was going to be pulling out, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem confirms that actually they're not going anywhere. We're actually going to be doubling down and putting more resources into Chicago.
Well, Governor Pritzker's personal attacks against President Trump puts his people in jeopardy each and every day. I'm just so thrilled with the results that we've had in Chicago, and we're going to surge more resources there. We're not going to just be in Chicago. We're spreading out to other cities and continuing to do our work. I won't talk, but we're not going to give him any relief from his political rhetoric. We're going to be in there defending these families. The significant difference that we've made in public safety in Chicago is something that we need more in many more cities. So I'm so thankful for Border Patrol, thankful for ICE that they get up every single day and they.
So Revelin speaks Spanish. She says, I couldn't hear most of it, but I did hear him say, ICE isn't going to get me. Wah, 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 wah. Now, Kristi Noem also announced Operation Dirtbag, where over 150 migrant sexual predators were just apprehended in Florida. She also noted that working with the DeSantis administration has been critical in making the streets safer for our citizens here in Florida. She said, our partnership with Florida is absolutely amazing. This operation was called Operation Criminal Return. I call it Operation Dirtbag because these people are sex offenders. Not just sex offenders. They were targeting children. Assault, battery, attempted homicide. 150 individuals are now gone off the streets. Our kids will be safer. And this partnership with Governor DeSantis in Florida is a model that we want to replicate across the country. These individuals should have never been in the country to begin with. The fact that they were here, they were sexual deviants and perverts, and now we've gotten them off the streets. It's remarkable, and we need to do more of it. I see somebody in the chat say, I voted for this. I absolutely voted for this as well. You gotta love it every time you see these people getting swept up. Now, doing their best to try to thwart our efforts to make our streets safe, a Biden-appointed judge is now poised to order the mass release of illegal aliens detained from Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago. Literally thousands of these illegal aliens could be dumped back out onto the Chicago streets. This is a blow to immigration enforcement. However, I don't believe that it's going to stick. A federal judge in Illinois is reportedly preparing to order the release of these thousands of illegal aliens taken off the streets in Operation Midway Blitz. According to ABC 7 Chicago, U.S. District Judge Jeffrey Cummings, who was appointed by Joe Biden, is weighing whether to grant what's called equitable relief that could see federal immigration authorities forced to release thousands of detainees into so-called alternatives to detention. This would be programs with like ankle monitors, smartphone check-ins, and other fairly ineffective tracking methods that have pretty much been given as loopholes to allow these people just to go commit crimes again. The case stems from the 2022 Casnone-Nava settlement. This was a consent decree that limits ICE agents' ability to make warrantless arrests in in Illinois and several neighboring states. The decree requires agents to predetermine probable cause that a person is in the U.S. illegally and poses a flight risk. Conditions immigration advocates now claim were violated in these recent raids. It was last month when Judge Cummings determined that federal agents had breached the terms of a consent decree established under the 2022 settlement, which restricts warrantless arrests in the Chicago area. Now, attorneys from the National Immigrant Justice Center, which is a left-wing activist group, argued that ICE's arrests of more than 3,000 illegal aliens under Operation Midway Blitz breached the agreement. They said, our initial analysis is that it's over 3,000 arrests. We've started to dig into the case file that they produced to us, and the vast majority are violations. If they did not have a prior order of removal in almost all circumstances, they've been uniformly violating the consent decree. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on that and see what happens. Hopefully, ICE just ships these people off to detention centers around the country. A Suffolk County judge has also been ordered the county to pay $112 million to hundreds of illegal aliens after a judge ruled they were unlawfully detained. This time, it's U.S. District Court Judge William F. Kuntz II, an Obama appointee. He issued the ruling after an illegal from Guatemala who was living in Long Island filed a lawsuit claiming he was detained by ICE beyond his release date. The judge ruled the sheriff's office in Long Island unlawfully held the illegal aliens since the state of New York doesn't allow local law enforcement to do so. The plaintiff was arrested in 2017. Police asked him about his immigration status, and he was illegal, so they arrested him. According to PIX 11, lawyers argued that the plaintiff's cousin paid a $1,000 bail with the agreement that he would appear in immigration court, yet he was never informed of the bail. Police reportedly transferred the Guatemalan illegal to the Varick Street Detention Center in Manhattan and later transferred him to a county jail in New Jersey. Now, the case ballooned after it became a class action, so now Suffolk County residents are on the hook for $112 million. This decision brings long overdue accountability, said the attorney for the plaintiffs. The jury confirmed that we have argued all along Suffolk County's actions trampled the basic due process rights guaranteed under the 14th Amendment. You are an illegal alien. You have no due process rights other than what the immigration courts prescribe you. Now, these are the types of people that the left is looking to put back on the streets. These are the types of people that they are trying to set free so that they can once again head out into America, violate the laws on our books, and victimize the people around them. Here we have a case of female illegal aliens running child sex trafficking rings down here in Palm Beach County. They crossed the border illegally, and they are now selling young girls as young as 10 years old.
31-year-old Cynthia Sosito Torres is charged with human trafficking, deriving support from prostitution, money laundering, child neglect, and keeping a house of ill fame. PBSO says multiple brothels in Palm Beach County and 1 in 4 were run by Torres and some of her family members. And PBSO says minors were being exploited in those brothels. Our sources say Cynthia was an underling of Brenda Brito, one of the most notorious leaders in this organization. PBSO says as investigators were closing in on Brenda Brito, Cynthia fled to Mexico, leaving 3 minor children, ages 10, 12, and 17, unattended for approximately 4 months. If you've seen the I-Team's coverage of the brothel next door, you know that CBS 12 News and Espanol anchor Carlos Maecha and I have been trying to shine a light on the dark world of sex for sale in migrant communities. Business cards that advertise food are code for prostitution, and hardworking families are living in fear because their kids are playing mere steps away from sex den. And deadly shootings are commonplace.
This is exactly what we are trying to get rid of. There is no place for this in the United States of America. There's frankly no place for it anywhere. But this is the type of individual that we're allowed to come into our nation freely and without consequence. And that's why we've got to get rid of them. So if you are supporting those people, that's the type of thing that you are supporting. Now, here's an interesting one. A staffer for Democrat Senator Tammy Duckworth was just caught posing as a lawyer to free an illegal alien from ICE custody. Senator Tammy Duckworth's staffer was caught fraudulently posing as a lawyer to help free this illegal immigrant from ICE custody in East St. Louis, Illinois. The Department of Homeland Security is rightfully demanding answers after the staffer, who is named Edward York, misrepresented himself to federal agents as legal counsel for Jose Ismael Oyuzo Sandoval. He's a 4-time deported illegal alien with a prior DUI conviction. And according to a letter from DHS, York entered the ICE facility on October 29th by falsifying a DHS form. York met with Sandoval and got him to sign a G-28 form, which allowed him to represent the illegal alien as a client. York also tried to submit the G-28 form without Sandoval's signature. 4 days later, a Suarez law office in Collinsville, Illinois, filed a G-28 electronically that also did not have Mr. Sandoval's signature, even though Mr. York, who claimed to work for the law firm, had already obtained a signed form. So the DHS believes that York was actually collaborating with the law firm. Let me open this up. Here we have video of the incident right here. There is Tammy Duckworth's staffer illegally and fraudulently filling out this form, representing himself as an attorney. That's got to be a federal crime. So the DHS is now asking Senator Tammy Duckworth's office for answers as to why he would do this. They have it all time-stamped. They have the video. Of course, they know exactly who he is. But this could blow up and become a much, much bigger problem for her. Now, the issue of H-1B visas has also recently come back into play after an interview that President Trump did with, I forgot her name. Anyways, a host on Fox News, Laura something or other. I can't remember her last name. Anyways, Scott Bessent was asked about this because a lot of people have said President Trump has turned his back on MAGA because he's going to allow H-1B visa holders. However, there is a very specific reason why these H-1B visa holders are necessary, so that we can train American workers so that we can get them off of the H-1B visa system. Take a listen to Scott Bessent lay it out.
You kind of clashed a little on H-1B visas, which you upped the fee to $100,000. I want you to watch this and tell me what you think.
And does that mean the H-1B visa thing?
Oh, Laura Ingraham, that's her name.
Will not be a big priority for your administration, because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent. When
we have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles.
Where do you stand, Mr. Secretary?
Brian, for years, 20, 30 years, we have offshored precision manufacturing jobs. And the president's point here is, we can't snap our fingers and say, you're going to learn how to build ships overnight. We want to bring semiconductor industry back to the U.S. There are going to be big facilities in Arizona. So I think the president's vision here is to bring in overseas workers where these jobs went.
Who have skills.
Who have the skills, 3, 5, 7 years to train the U.S. workers. Then they can go home, the U.S. workers fully take over.
So do you understand the concern that people have? Hey, an American could have that job. Why you give it to a guy from
But an American can't have that job.
So it's specific skills.
Because we haven't built ships in the U.S. for years. We haven't built semiconductors. So this idea of overseas partners coming in, teaching American workers, then returning home, that's a home run.
Okay, I hope everybody understands that. Without the requisite skill and training, these industries will not be able to return to the United States of America. These are not the kind of jobs that you can just plop unskilled labor into and expect that you're going to have the type of quality control that would be necessary to ensure the success of these industries long-term here in the United States. So you heard Scott Bessent there. 3, 5, maybe 7 years. That's what it will require to get the American labor force up to speed, educate and train them so that it can be done exclusively with American labor without the need for these H-1B visa holders. This entire program was designed to offshore American jobs, to ensure that unskilled migrant labor could come here and take even more jobs from Americans. They have reduced the number of H-1B visa holders. They have increased the fee to $100,000. I think it's quite obvious what President Trump is attempting to do here. He's making it more difficult for companies to just wholesale bring H-1B visa holders here, but the ones that will be coming here are the ones that will be training American workers to, in the very near future, take over these industries and bring us back to a place of manufacturing dominance. I hope people can understand that because it's totally logical to me. All right, next. A terrible, terrible thing happened in Chicago. And again, this is the type of thing that the left is championing every single day. We had an unprovoked attack that was committed against a 27-year-old woman. She was sitting in the train station when this man on screen there, who appears to be carrying a fillet knife of some kind, came in and stabbed her in the chest on the 8th at approximately 11:14 p.m. This guy shows up. He produces a large knife from a backpack as he's standing on the platform. And then he approaches this woman who's seated on a bench, much like Irina Zarutska on the train in North Carolina. He stabs her in the chest, and that caused her to sustain a pretty serious laceration. And then the man walked away. He just left, and he was able to get away. He's still at large, and police are asking for any information to be able to find this guy. And I don't believe this woman is dead. I believe that she is currently recovering, but this could have been a very different situation. But this is the kind of thing that the Democrats are championing, and it is completely unacceptable. All right, now, getting back to Florida, James Uthmeier, my attorney general, he has just announced the intention for Florida to seek the death penalty against a man by the name of Nathan Holmberg. Nathan Holmberg is a man who is found to have raped children.
I'm going to announce this morning that in this case, we will be seeking the death penalty. I believe that crimes like this against young children, where you take their innocence, you take their childhood away from them, these horrific acts deserve the ultimate form of justice. So we will be doing everything we can legally to send him to meet his maker.
Let this be a lesson. If you're going to come to Florida and you're going to engage in this type of behavior, your life is not guaranteed. In fact, it's almost guaranteed that you will be sent to a burning lake of fire. And I absolutely champion James Uthmeier making this decision. All right, real quickly, I have a brief message from over here on Rumble. All right, Brooke Burke. She's a fixture in the entertainment and wellness industry for decades, and she's known for her roles in Dancing with the Stars and Wild On, but she's generally not someone to shy away from the spotlight. Shortly after she turned 50, despite her expertise, the fitness icon suddenly found herself battling a body that seemed to be working against her. Now Brooke is opening up publicly about her experiences because it's one that millions of women face. Unexplained weight gain, muscle loss, and declining energy. And she's revealing how she discovered one thing that made her leaner, stronger, and healthier than ever. She says today at 53, she feels amazing and her abs are tighter than they were 10 years ago. What changed for her was she began biohacking and discovered that she needed more protein, but not just any protein, one specific protein that was a total game changer. And when she found it, she says it was like uncovering a secret weapon for weight management and muscle gain. Everything changed. I'm leaner and stronger than I've been in my whole life, she said. She's sharing this with the world, to both women and men who can learn all about this revolutionary protein. Click the link in the chat or scan the QR code on screen and watch for free. All right. Now, we also have an incredible announcement coming from the White House and Kash Patel. Earlier this week, it was announced
President Trump's meeting to meet with his counterpart in Beijing.
Earlier this week, it was announced that Kash Patel had traveled to China to have a secret meeting with President Xi Jinping's government. It turns out that meeting was to orchestrate the banning of fentanyl precursors into the United States. What this is effectively doing is ending the pipeline of fentanyl production here in America. Now, of course, you can still get fentanyl precursors in Mexico and in other areas, but that means it's going to be more difficult for them to bring those drugs into the United States. Take a listen, because this is going to do more to save American lives than many other things the administration has done.
Here to the United States of America, and the FBI director recently traveled to China following President Trump's meeting to meet with his counterpart in Beijing, and he has a really positive announcement for the American people to share. So the president wanted me to bring the FBI director out to share that with all of you today. So Kash, please, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Caroline. As Caroline mentioned, we have some tremendous news thanks to President Donald J. Trump once again for the American people. As soon as the President of the United States took office, he issued a mandate to rid America of the scourge that is fentanyl, a drug that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. Thanks to his leadership and direct engagements with China, we set up a framework to execute that mission 8 months ago. Attorney General Bondi immediately thereafter took steps to engage her counterpart in China at the Ministry of Public Security. Pursuant to their direct discussions, as the FBI director designated to run counterpoint on this, along with the Secretary of State Rubio and Ambassador Perdue and the team here at the White House, we set forward a path to implement the policy needed to crush the plague of fentanyl. Deputy Attorney General Blanche and our teams have been hard at work ever since, ultimately culminating in my trip to Beijing last week. This was only possible due to President Trump's historic engagement with President Xi just a few short weeks ago that set the stage for today's announcement. At that meeting, the leaders reached an agreement. But just to put this in frame for the American people, a reminder here that nearly 100,000 people died of fentanyl overdoses just last year alone. Here, this year, under this president, the FBI has seized 1,900 kilograms of fentanyl so far. That is a 31% increase from the same time period last year. To put it in perspective, that's enough fentanyl to kill 127 million Americans. Fentanyl precursors are what makes up fentanyl. While we, the interagency, the Department of Justice, have been fighting hard to seize and stop drug traffickers, we must attack.
Okay, Watchwoman on the water. We're talking about illicit street fentanyl. There is a major difference between prescribed fentanyl that is coming from medical sources and being given for pain and stuff like that, and the fentanyl that you buy on the street when you're living in Kensington in Philadelphia, or that is being used to press fake pills and then be sold to college students who then overdose. Totally different. We are talking about two different things. We are talking about illicit fentanyl that has hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans hooked on illicit drugs.
Fentanyl precursors, the ingredients necessary to make this lethal drug. That was the sole purpose of my trip to China, to eliminate these precursors. And if successful, we would suffocate the drug trafficking organization's ability to manufacture fentanyl in places like Mexico. This was the first time an FBI director has been to China in over a decade and received the audience with his counterpart to address this matter directly. And again, thanks to President Trump's direct engagement with President Xi, the government of China committed fully to my engagement there on the ground in Beijing at a level never seen before. While at Ministry of Public Security headquarters, I met with my counterpart at MPS, where the Chinese government agreed on a plan to stop fentanyl precursors. What does that mean? The People's Republic of China has fully designated and listed all 13 precursors utilized to make fentanyl. Furthermore, they have agreed to control 7 chemical subsidiaries that are also utilized to produce this lethal drug. Effective immediately, essentially, President Trump has shut off the pipeline that creates fentanyl that kills tens of thousands of Americans.
So up until this point, what you had were illicit cartel labs all around the country. These fentanyl precursors would be shipped in from China because they were totally legal. They were just chemical constituents. It's not fentanyl when you get it as a precursor. And then these illicit labs would create the fentanyl powder itself, and then that would be cut down and put into packs to be sold on the street. It would be added into other products used to get people addicted. And then once people are addicted to fentanyl, they're basically going to be addicted to fentanyl forever, especially when it's available super cheap on the streets. As I showed you previously, in places like Portland, Oregon, if you're homeless and they know you're homeless, they sell you fentanyl cheaper because they know that you're going to need to keep coming back to get it, and you will spend all of your money on it. This is a tremendous win for the people of America and for drug addicts all around the country. You add this together with the president's efforts to get hospitals and treatment centers up off the ground, mental health facilities. We have an opportunity here to potentially end the illegal drug epidemic that is plaguing our streets and sending people into a lifetime of spiraling addiction. All right, now, we are also going to update on the story that we've talked about for the last couple of days, the corruption scandal that has erupted inside Ukraine, because now Volodymyr Zelensky, the president, has been officially directly implicated. Yesterday we talked about the recordings that were in the hands of Nabu. Zelensky has now been forced to come out and speak publicly about this. He is now moving to sanction his own financial backers, Mindich and the Zuckerman brothers. He's also fired the Justice and Energy Minister over the scandal. The Justice Minister used to be the Energy Minister, and the current Energy Minister was his lover. They were having an affair. He moves up to justice. She moves into his position. They both are taking part in the graft, which is stealing money from the Ukrainians, which was coming from the taxpayers of the United States government. So the reporting on this is wild, because all around the world, people are now admitting that Zelensky is running a corrupt administration. I don't think Zelensky is going to be in power for much longer. And this is highly notable because the Russians have essentially cut off a large portion of the remaining Ukrainian troops.
Я вважаю, що
All right,
міністр
so
юстиції
I'm going to translate because Zelensky is speaking in Ukrainian. I believe that the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Energy cannot remain in office. This is a question in particular of trust. If there are accusations, they must be answered. The decision to remove them from office is prompt, the fastest. I asked the Prime Minister of Ukraine to have resignations from these ministers. I asked the deputies of the Verkhovna Rada to support these statements, and then everything must be resolved in a legal manner. Third, there will be a decision by the National Security and Defense Council on sanctions based on the submission of the cabinet ministers of Ukraine. Right now, everyone in Ukraine is going through an extremely difficult time, going through power outages, Russian strikes, and losses. It is absolutely abnormal that there are still some schemes in the energy sector. I will sign a decree imposing sanctions against 2 people who appear in the Nabu case regarding Energoatom. Again, these are people who were close allies and associates. Mindich and the Zuckerman brothers have fled the country. Alexander Dubinsky, who is a political prisoner in Ukraine, he says prosecutors have connected Zelensky to energy money laundering network. In the high-profile energy corruption case, Ukraine's anti-corruption court for the first time heard the name of President Volodymyr Zelensky mentioned in the official proceedings. The state prosecutor confirmed that the president personally called Energy Minister Herman Holashenko at the request and following a message from his longtime business associate Timur Mindich, who is also a defendant in the case and has been formally charged with organizing a money laundering back office. According to the intercepted conversation presented in court, Zelensky's call came right after Mindich told Holashenko that Hera wanted to meet him and urged him to do whatever the president says. In the same exchange, Holashenko replied that he was heading out, effectively confirming the deal. Investigators estimate that over $100 million was laundered through the Energy Ministry's kickback schemes linked to this network. Mindich has fled Ukraine. It is no longer just the Mindich case. It is now the Zelensky case. You can also listen to the court proceedings here, but it's in Ukrainian, so we're not going to do that. Just wanted to show you that the circle is tightening around Zelensky and things are not going very well. All right, you guys, we're going to go ahead and be closing it out there. I'm going to read through the gold pills on Pilled. I just want to remind you that you can get your red pill Christmas sweaters and shirts and hoodies and long sleeve tees, and also even a plush blanket directly from Rise Attire USA. And of course, you can look to use the code REDPILL78 to get yourself a special deal. Go ahead and check that out. And there we go. Just passing this out on all of the platforms. There we are. All right. So let's go through the gold pills over on Pilled. Let's see. Filter Dog says, does the guy smell like a goat? Also, McStain was buds with this guy. Isn't this the head chopper? Allegedly, but we don't know. Gordon and I talked about it the other night. Remsford, thanks for the cookie. Ohio Kimmy, thanks for the cookie. Mighty Patriot, dropped some shades. Haven't seen any improvement here in Michigan so far. Anyway, yeah, well, Michigan is totally captured. Good Dog 45, thank you for the can. No thanks, Joe, says this is so enjoyable every day, more and more. Thanks, Lisa and Zach. God bless. Stay safe. Thank you for that. 07 to the viewer chatting. Keck Lives Matter over there on Twitter. No thanks, Joe. Thank you again. John Glock says, my 1-year-old is waving at you on the screen and saying, hi there. Hey, hi. How you doing, buddy? How you doing, John Glocks Jr.? One Thunder, thank you for the can. And Good Dog 45, thank you for the can. All right. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for being here, everyone. I will be live tonight at 9 p.m. on Badlands Media for Altered State with my good friend Brad Calagero-Getz, also known as Where We Go When We Go All. So join me over there, or you can just be back here tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Until that time, guys, good luck and God bless. We'll see you.